Welcome to our session, Crafting Dynamic Solutions, a deep dive into Claris Studio for powerful app development. I blame ChatGPT for this name, and now I know, it being my first engage, keep it shorter next time. My name is Bridget Lumb, and I'm the product owner of Claris Studio, and I'll be presenting alongside Angela Chen today, who's a software engineer. We'll be doing some demos, and we also have a special guest, but that's for later. Now, as you can see, we have a lot of stuff to get through today. But the goal of today's session is for all of you to get a deeper understanding of Claris Studio, where it's at right now, and where we see it going, and how you as a developer can leverage it. So before we jump into some really exciting demos and stories, I want to set the stage really quickly. So here at Claris, we do believe that FileMaker is ideal for building solutions that can scale to hundreds of users, that can be deployed wherever work is done, and your problems can be solved. You all have proven this to us over the past 35 plus years, and we'll always continuously make improvements to FileMaker to solve for new requirements. That being said, as Giuliano mentioned in the keynote, there's also an important set of requirements that go to externally facing users that have different requirements from internal. First, they can't rely on operating systems or specific installed apps. They have to be responsive, native web applications. And second, external audiences can be of unpredictable size. They might be very large, or they may have to scale gracefully. So with that, enters Claris Studio. Claris Studio, we want you to have another tool in your developer toolbox. Just like you wouldn't try and saw a piece of wood in half with a hammer, you probably wouldn't use FileMaker to build a responsive native web application that can scale gracefully. Well, you could, and I'm sure a lot of you have, but it may take a very long time. With Claris Studio, we wanted to bring you, the developer, a modern UI application that's built on an entirely new tech stack, MongoDB and React.js, that's focused on performance and scalability and tightly integrated with the rest of our platform. But I know you might be thinking, she just threw out a lot of buzzwords. What does that mean to me? How can I, as a developer, leverage this solution? And I'll answer that question with a story. Remco van Buren from OpenSea came to Studio with an anonymous data collection use case to get data for his FileMaker solution. But no one tells that story better than Remco van Buren. So I'm going to bring him out right now to tell that story for you all.
Which button?
This one, I think.
Thank you, Bridget. My name is Remco van Buren. I'm from a company called OpenSea. I'm from the Netherlands. And for the last 30 years, I've been working in senior management position with insurance companies. So insurance is my background, but also always combined with IT. And I've also an IT background in education. So and 10 years ago, I founded the company OpenSea that we're working now with in the Netherlands, and they have been developing software on the FileMaker platform that is an insurance system. So, and that's what we did 2 years ago. We migrated our old Real Access software to FileMaker. So I'm really a FileMaker guy, but I'm also very enthusiastic about Studio, and that's what we're talking about today. So we're a small network company in the Netherlands, and our vision is really to make insurance products, insurance processes, insurance solutions far more simple than they are today. And I have to add to that, far more simple for the people who know about insurance. That's important to add to that. Now, our clients are most of them are very small companies. We ourselves are also a very small company that are highly specialized in typical niche markets. And some of them have access to the largest insurance markets of the world. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So first client, just to give you a few examples of clients, it's important to get some context, and then we'll kick off in the demo of Studio, of course, which is the core of my part of the presentation. Donatus, it's a Dutch insurance company, only insures monumental buildings. Most of them are hundreds of years old, and they have to be insured because the people who own them are really very keen on preserving that heritage for the future generations. So that's very important to that. But sometimes something like this happens, and then you know that insurance is a very important provision. This mill was, by the way, rebuilt. So that's a rare case of rebuilding a mill. Most of the time they get completely lost when there is some fireworks entering it from the outside. Another client, very interesting client, We Insure. It's not the We Insure group that we know here in the United States of America. It's a Dutch We Insure group, and they insure films, film productions. And they have some clients, I can't mention them by name, but I'm sure everybody in this room, if I would name a few of them, would absolutely know what I'm talking about, who those clients are. They make feature films, but also smaller production companies. And they're a very interesting client for us. And they are the first one who have adopted our new Real Access insurance system that we have migrated from our old platform to the FileMaker platform. So again, I'm a FileMaker guy. They also do insuring large events where thousands of people gather together for a concert, for instance. That's a risky event, of course. All things can go wrong there. So that's some examples, and the third one is Solarif. I'll talk about that in a bit, because the demo is actually going about Solarif, and they do B2B, only B2B large solar platforms, and then the insurance of it, and also the inspection and the certification of those platforms. So then Bridget reached out, and a few of their colleagues, and said, why don't you try Claris Studio? Because we became a Claris partner only last year, so we're kind of a new kid on the block. And I said immediately, yes, that's good. Let's try it out. Because I was following it from a fair distance for the last couple of years, from day one that Studio was announced. And now I could get my hands on it. And immediately it was clear for us that we were working it. Literally within an hour, we were developing things. And that's me, my marketing colleague, and my sales manager. So I called them and I said, well, this is great stuff. You have to use this. And since then, we have developed, in a few days, all kinds of internal processes, applications, so to speak, to support our internal processes for OpenSea, to get a feel about it. Developing forms. Insurance is about forms, of course. And also our marketing efforts, our LinkedIn posts, our sales and lead and prospect generation, and our task management for all kinds of things. And that was really a surprise to myself, how easy, and there is no threshold. You can immediately use it and make some applications and get on with it. And then we told that we did. And we also made, by the way, a ticket system for one of our clients. So we tried to involve some of our clients immediately in this new Claris Studio. And we succeeded in that. So they could get their tickets issued to us and their wishes. And then we told about this to Claris, and then a couple of things happened. We were invited to the Claris kitchen. So then we got access to newer functionalities. And one of them is very important. It's the custom view in Claris Studio. And that gives you a lot of freedom. And at the same time, to start with, it's fairly easy. So there's no threshold there as well. And you can make wonderful stuff with it. So we continued on our journey to using Studio. And then Harry Wolkenfeld, he's the CEO of Solarif Group, and the surname is very interesting because Wolkenfeld, if you translate that, it's something like cloud field, and he's in solar. So that's kind of funny, I always think. And he called me and he said, Remco, could you, with OpenSea and that studio thing, he said literally, can you make a business process, can you support that, can you automate that with Studio and perhaps also with FileMaker? And 2 days later we had a proof of concept with the forms in place. And we made use of our already existing FileMaker database to generate dynamic documents, which you also use for the insurance policies and invoices, etc. So then they would say, well, go ahead with this project. So we acquired the project thanks to Studio. And then we were in need of a project management dashboard, and that's what we have built in Studio, just to test for ourselves, can we do project management in Studio? And how do we do that? And can we develop something that's easy in Studio based upon the preview templates that Studio provides to you? And then, so we did. So this is what I developed myself. And if I press a button, the mouse is going to move. And on the left-hand side, you see with the pie chart, the task that are in progress or to do. There's not yet any task done yet at this stage in the project. In the middle is the burn rate. And on the right-hand side, you see the priority, the division of tasks in priority. Most of them are high priority. The below bar chart is tasks, hours estimate, hours spent per task, and the color represents the sprint the task is allocated to. So that's what we have developed. And then the hard part was to develop those 2 filters that are dependent on each other. So you can see, I can choose the task from one sprint and only see the high priority tasks. But then if I delete the sprint, I want to see all the high priority tasks, no matter in which sprint they are in. Once we figured that out, that worked very great. And of course, the right-hand side shows 100% because I only have the high priority task here selected. So, second case, in the same project dashboard, we came up with this. So, first of all, we developed a spreadsheet and a form to define user stories. As a client, I want to do this and that in order to do that and that. They're in the table. I can change the column width if I want to. I can see or edit the record very easily. And then I discovered something. I can also see the history, the track record, the tracking of the record editing. And then if I click on one task, it filters down only the task, user story, only the tasks that are part of this user story. So then I can focus. And then you can see it, 436 is here, the key for 436, the user story primary. Third, the backlog, 3 epics, several sprints, and if I click one task within a sprint, on the right-hand side, I can see my details. And this is all a matter of just hours working on it, and then you have your project management dashboard. And then the sprints, we have to do, done, and in progress. Might not be the order that you would expect, but for us it's very good the way it works like this, and then also you have your details on the right-hand side. So this is the project management dashboard of the particular project for the inspection process of solar panel, large solar panel platforms. And SolarIF, our client, can also view this project, so we can together manage that project, which is lovely because then you have an extra interaction with your client in the project itself. Then I saw a small error, which I'm improving right now while I was making this video. So, and there you can see the power of the custom view, because the sprint button was behind the to-do button, and I've just fixed that. So that's the, now I've come to realize that I can do 2 things at the same time. I didn't know that in my life, but now I do. Thanks to Studio, thanks to the custom view. So that gives you an impression what we have done up until so far. So to conclude, I'm very sure that every one of you here has 1 or 2 clients at this moment in, and I say that humble and in a modest way, but I'm dead sure that everybody in this audience has one or two clients that are in need of Studio right now. It has to be, because it's so easy to use, not only for yourself, but for your clients. Just please try this out. And for us, it meant that we acquired a new project that we didn't had acquired previously. So we are very committed to go on with Studio, also with FileMaker and also with Claris Connect, because they're parts, in our view, of the same architecture. And you just have to find the right spot of each application, of each platform in your architecture for the client. So this project will definitely include Claris FileMaker, but it also will include Studio, both of them, and Claris Connect, by the way, so all three of them. So I'm convinced that when combined, you and your clients will benefit. So thank you very much, and stay open.
Thank you so much, Remco. As you can see, Studio has come a long way since its form days. Now, before we jump into some demos, I'm going to take us back to the beginning real quick, again, to set the stage. I know, I'm sorry, you're here for the demos. But when we started building Claris Studio, we wanted to anchor our development around use cases to make sure that we're delivering you value while also providing the right building blocks. And when we first launched Studio, we missed an opportunity to tell us a beautiful story of how Studio was growing together with the platform, Connect, and FileMaker. There was confusion that Studio was replacing FileMaker, and therefore should have FileMaker equivalent functionality. But let me now tell you the beautiful story of how Studio came to be where it is today. So our first use case, as I mentioned in the keynote, was anonymous data collection. We know that with FileMaker and its current licensing, data collection is difficult to do in FileMaker. And we thought this was a great use case to start with, so that behind the scenes, we could build our entirely new tech stack. From there, the natural next steps was to have a spreadsheet view. So you can manipulate your data and view it, and from there, port it over to FileMaker to actually be able to leverage your data. The next use case, our next use case that we selected was project management. We know that project management is a very complex use case that can vary very widely from company to company. We validated with our partners their pain in sharing their project statuses with their clients. And we also wanted to prove internally to ourselves that we could use Studio. And we had pain with project management. So this range is exactly why we chose project management as our next use case. The complexity and depth of the use case allowed us to start building some really interesting building blocks that you saw in Remco's demo. But we had a long way to go before we got there. So next came the list detail view. And as you can see, it has the list of records on the right, and on the left populates with the details of the record. Then came Kanban view, which we use a lot, and as Remco showed as well, to visualize the progress of your project. List view came as well to be able to view your data in grouped records. Timeline view came so you're able to visually see how your project is tracking. Gallery view came to view photos and videos easily. And lastly, we had calendar view to be able to manipulate your data in a calendar setting. But all of these views were just stepping stones. And now, as you got a sneak peek of in both Remco's demo and in the keynote, these are now all objects that can be dragged and dropped onto our custom view. But along the way, we had to create a rich set of features and functionality as well, including calculations, filtering, sorting, grouping, relationships, charting, a lot more field types, and so much more. We don't have time to cover all of it today. And that led us to where we are today, which you saw in Remco's demo of Custom View. And Custom View is exactly what you think it is. It's a completely blank canvas for you all to build on. But like I said before, the real magic is under the hood of how the developer can leverage this canvas. And to show you some of that magic, I'm going to hand it off to Angela Chen now to do some demos.
Thank you, Bridget. Yeah. So hello, everyone. My name is Angela Chen, and I'm a front-end software engineer here at Claris Studio. So I'm super excited to meet all of you here, and I can't wait to share with you some cool stuff that we're building. So as Bridget said earlier, Studio has been evolving through the lens of project management use case, as our goal is always to provide you with powerful building blocks that can easily solve for external facing applications. So, and I believe you're as excited as I am to watch Remco's demo and saw how he unleashed the power of a Studio custom view and created such a beautiful Studio application. So now it's time for us to unveil some behind the scene magics. And first, I'll do a big expansion on custom view. So why do we build custom view, and what does it mean to have a new level of customization? So through the early stage of Studio, one of the feedback we got is that we wanted more customization of the existing views. So for example, here in list detail, we hope that the data list doesn't always have to be on the left. And in the form, we want to size and position things in a way that wasn't possible with the 3-column grid system. So with all that feedback, we started building a much more flexible layout. So the custom view today supports a 12-span grid system, which gave you much more flexibility on how you want to design your own layout. And we also built a seamless drag and drop experience and brought the responsiveness to a whole new level. So the expectation here is that Studio behaves as a modern web application, and we always want to stay true to that. So after we solve the needs of customizing the layout, now the question becomes, what if we want to show multiple views at the same screen, or even make the views interact with each other? So the answer to that question is what we call data controls in Studio, as you might have already heard. So yeah, like you've seen, in Studio, we converted all the in-market views into a set of objects in your custom view, and we call them data controls. So the power of these data controls is in the control. So each data control will now manage its own record navigation and drives its own selection events that will eventually populate the other controls in your application. And more importantly, a data control itself is now bound with a table based on your choice. So as we know previously, a view is always backed by a table in FileMaker or Studio, which is still true today. But now, on top of that, you can associate a table to your data control objects. And with that flexibility, you can have multiple tables represented at the same view. So the introduction of data control also means that there will be a lot more objects to manage. And to help you do that easily, we introduce object grouping. So object groups, like its name, it provides one more layer of objects and allow a group-based layout. So you can now create a group of multiple objects. You can size or position the whole group together so that they don't get split up or staggered. Your group can even maintain its own responsiveness so that, for example, when your window resides, all the objects will stay within the same group. And there's also the ability to control the visibility by groups, which means that you can now show or hide the entire group based on the conditions you set. And beyond that, groups are extremely helpful in regards of the data hierarchy. So if you are building a Studio view, you can still configure the data source at the view level. And however, if you find yourself needing to override or introduce multiple data sources, you can do that at the group level. And then individual objects will also have the ability to inherit or override the group data source. So yeah, we believe that data controls and object grouping will allow you to build a much more dynamic solution as you need with a smaller amount of time. So now it's time for us to go into Studio and see some magics ourselves. So we were planning to do a live demo, but we figured that it might not be the best idea with 600 people in the same building sharing the same Wi-Fi connection. So I made this 2 demo videos of how we can build a solution like this in a few minutes. So this is what the end state will look like. In this use case, I'm a Studio product team member, and I want to build a dynamic task Kanban page that for my team member to easily manage our tasks around the preparation of the Engage this year, which is the use case I live and breathe in every day now. So yeah, so we are now looking at a Studio custom view. I gave this view a name, Claris Engage 2024 on the top. And before we start adding stuff into the view, let's look at what we call the properties pane on the right. So this is basically where all the magics happen. And now the properties pane is focusing on the view itself. And on top of it, we saw a data source section. So from here, you can actually assign a table and a record to the view. And these settings, as we mentioned, can be inherited and overridden by the groups or objects inside the view. And in this instance, our view is backed by a table called Engage Task. So I created this table before the demo and added some sample tasks. And the table has some task-related fields such as summary, description, status, assignee, and so on. Yeah. And by setting this as the views table, we started making assumptions for our app. Next, we will look at the top left side and open the Add Object menu. So from here, on top of the list, we will see the field object, which can be used as a representation of the fields in your table. And also, you can simply use it as a UI element for your app. And when we scroll down, we will see summary object, which provides various types of beautiful charts that you just saw from Remco's demo. And if we continue scrolling, here, data control are what we want to focus on first. So as we mentioned, in the early evolution of Studio, we worked really hard to implement a set of different views, such as list detail, spreadsheet, Kanban, list view, and so on, so that you can always find the best representation for a data set. And now we brought all that power into custom view by componentizing them. Yeah. So majority of the views here are now objects ready for you to use. And for our case, we want to build a Kanban board. So let's drag Kanban into the view. So as you can see, as we drop it, the Kanban is automatically populated with the task record. And that's because we already make the assumption at the view level. And next, let's make some quick configuration together to make the Kanban board more usable. So for Kanban, you can actually change the grouping field, which will decide what columns to show on the board. So this setting is also provided in the list view. So like whenever you want to use group to represent your data, and you can change it whenever you need to. And for our case, we want to show to do, in progress, and done columns. So we change it to status. And below that, in the options window, here are a few settings we can use to make the objects more customizable. And it might vary based on the needs of different data controls objects. And for our case, we want to allow the records to be edited because I want my team members to be able to modify their own task. And below, here are settings that you can use to customize your Kanban card. Again, the list of settings might vary based on different needs of different types of data controls. But from here, we'll just make the card larger. And you're actually able to select whatever information you want to display in your Kanban card. And below is the format section, from where you can massage the data that your end user are going to see. So we're actually going to, we'll be seeing the filter settings very soon. But for now, yeah, we'll just be hiding the not categorized column since it's not as usable as others. Okay, and then after configuring the Kanban objects, the next thing we want to do is to allow users to see and modify the details of the selected record at the same screen. So the way we're going to do that is to create a group that performs as a record form group. So first, we will be adding a group, which is on the bottom of the list. We're utilizing the empty space on the right. And then we'll be adding the summary object, which is the title you see here from the card. And that is under the hood a short text field. So let's drag a short text field into the group, quick and easy. And then we want to associate this short text object with the summary field in the task table. So we're going to the data source section again and simply assign it with the correct the data source we want. And for record data, we notice that it's defaulted to be inherit. So what it means is that the object will get the record ID from one level higher. And in this case, it will get it from the group. And later, we'll actually be assigning the record ID to the group because we want the whole group to be representing the same record. So we're going to do the same step for the description field, which are the text you saw here. It's essentially a rich text field. And we also, let's say we want a assignee field because we want to easily reassign a task. Okay, same step, quick and easy. Okay, and as we mentioned earlier, since these objects are now belong to the same group, we're actually able to size and position them all together instead of doing it one by one. So I want to keep more space for my Kanban. I want them to align better. I can do that. So next, what we still need to do is to link the record form group and the Kanban. So the missing piece here is to calculate the record ID for the form group. So let's focus on the form group. And then in the record data section dropdown on the right, we will switch to from calculation. And from here, we can open the formula editor where we'll be using the calculation engine. Okay, cool. So from here, from the calculation engine, we can actually call the current view by its name. So we have this beautiful auto-completion to save your time. And then with a dot notation, you're actually able to access all the existing objects in this view. So for our case, we want to access the Kanban objects. So let's do that. By default, the object names will be its type. And inside Kanban objects, we have this selected item property, which is exactly what we want. And from here, let's do one more layer. So from here, we're actually able to access all the field data as long as the record ID of that selected record. So for our case, we want the record ID. And that's it. We can go ahead and apply it. So yeah, with the expression we just wrote, the group now is linked to the Kanban board. And in Studio, whenever you're ready to test some changes you just made, you normally go to the top right where we have a preview button, and then you will just open your app in a separate tab. So within a few seconds, okay, cool. So as you can see, now we got a Kanban object displaying all the tasks from the table, and we also got a record form group on the right. So whenever I click on a card, I will see the record being shown on the right side. And I can also modify the record. Like here, I will give the task more description of creating a survey. And then I will reassign this ticket to Bridget because she's the survey expert in the team. And done. You will see that all the changes we just made will be saved and reflected on the table. Okay, so now let's, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah, now let's take a step back and talk more about the calculation engine. Oh, wrong button. Okay. So the association you just saw between the Kanban object record form group actually demonstrated the next critical power of a Studio custom view, which is the power to control your own business logic and the ability to program how your apps behave. And the way Studio gives entry point to that is through a calculation engine. So Yeah, in the previous demo, so the calculation engine in Studio provides a functional programming language. And in the previous demo, you're actually seeing what we call the dot notation. And with a dot notation, you can easily reach into a view or any object properties that you might need for your business logic. And for example, for all the data control objects, we actually provide this selected item property, which gave you access to all the record ID and field data within the selected record. And yeah, similar to FileMaker, Studio introduced object names. So by default, when you create an object, the object name will be populated as the object type with a unique index when needed. And as a developer, you get to customize the name when you need, as long as the name is unique, so the runtime engine can always find the right object for you. And the calculation engine consists more than 80 powerful functions that you can use. So under the hood, Studio Engineering took a subset of JavaScript's functionality and added some new stuff like specific functions or events that to handle different business use cases. So with this foundation, you get the JavaScript operator that you're already familiar with. And you also get these powerful functions that can directly reference or talk to your Studio components. And on top of all this, all the functions we support are well documented for your ease to reference and use. And we are adding more and more functions to the list. So here are some examples of the areas that our calculation engine are exposed to. So you can use calculations for record data, like how we use it to associate the Kanban and the record form group. You can define conditions for showing and hiding an object or a group. You can filter a table for your data control objects using calculation. And you can handle events with calculation. You can also define some context variables that can be accessed globally across objects or even across views. And beyond this list, there are still a lot more for you to discover. So for the next part of our demo, we'll be focusing on using calculation to control the form group visibility and the data filters for our Kanban objects. Okay, so now let's look back at our Kanban app in Studio. So first, let's make a quick improvement together. So in this screen, when there is no record selected, we notice that the empty form here might confuse our end users of what they can do. So let's say we want to hide the group dynamically when there's no record selected. So let's go back to the developer mode. And we want to focus on the group. So in the top of the properties pane, there's also an automation tab, and from where you can customize your object names like we talked about earlier. And we also support you to create automation events, so like setting visibility or setting the value for your field. So for our case, let's open the formula editor for the visibility. So basically here, we want to write an expression that returns true only when the selected record ID is not empty. So we can do the exact same thing to access the selected record ID. Select the item, record ID. Cool. And from here, we're going to use a function called isBlank to help us check if the record ID is empty. And however, we also want the functions to return true only if it's not empty. So we're going to just add a not operator, which is from JavaScript. And then, yeah, we can apply the expression. And that's it for the group visibility. And for our next use case, I want to help my team member easily find the task through a custom filter mechanism. So in our team's use case, we use agile development, which means that we would like to focus on a sprint to understand the team's day-to-day progress. So we'll be doing that utilizing the filter calculation for data controls objects. So let's go ahead and, so first of all, we want a UI element to allow the team member to select a sprint. So we will just add a drop-down object. And from here, we will associate the drop-down objects with the sprint field existing in task table. And for the record data, we're actually going to leave it as empty. So this is exactly the use case when we want to use a field object as a UI control and not associate it with any record data. And then I want to do one more thing this time. Let's go to the Automation tab and give the objects a customized name. So let's call it Sprint Selector, so it's easier to identify in Calc Engine. Okay, cool. So what we still need to do here is to link these two objects. So we want the command to filter its data based on the selected value inside the sprint dropdown. So let's focus on the command again. And from the properties pane, we want to go to where we saw earlier, the filter settings. And instead of doing a fixed filter, we want to do something more robust, and we want to introduce our own business logic. So let's switch to calculation. And again, let's open the formula editor. So what we need to write here essentially is to compare the sprint column data with the sprint drop-down value from the view. So we mentioned earlier that you can call a view directly inside the calculation engine, and that is also true to a table. So here I'm calling the engage task table and access the sprint column, use double equal for comparison. And then I want to access the value from the sprint selector, which we just gave a unique name, so it's easier to find. And for our case, we'll use the raw value property. And yeah, this is the core expressions that we need. But however, we also want to handle the case when the selected, the sprint dropdown is empty. So with these expressions, when no sprint is selected, it will actually returns the tasks that are not assigned to any sprint. But that's not what we want. We actually want to show all the tasks by default. So to do that, we just need to add a OR operation. And we'll use the isBlank function again. It's a really useful function. So this time, we'll be targeting the sprint selector component. Okay, cool. And done. This is the expression that we need. And let's go test our app again. I'll refresh it this time. Okay, cool. So we see that by default, we only see the task Kanban board. And when I select the record, the group will show up. And when I deselect, it will go away. And perfect. And also, I can choose the sprint to focus. Yeah, so when I choose a sprint, it will only show the task for that sprint. And with that context, I can still focus on the task to see the detail, modify the detail. And I can always clear the sprint selections to see all the tasks again. So yeah, all of this happened on the same screen. And we just built this beautiful dynamic task Kanban page within a few minutes.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, here are even more cool stuff about Studio Custom View that we can't wait to give to your hands. And next, I will hand it back to Bridget to talk about ways you can get more exposure to Studio and play around with all these new cool features. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Okay, let's take a second to process all of that information. And as you take this in, let me show you a few more examples of how all of these cool new features can and are being leveraged by some of our partners today. Like I mentioned before, we wanted to use Studio ourselves for our project management. And this is a snapshot of what our Studio front-end teams are currently using today. I would love to take a deeper dive into this, but please come visit us at the product booth to show you all the cool features that were set up in this project management template. Joris Arts from ClickWorks, who's sitting right here, is working on building a project management dashboard to leverage internally that he might be able to replace his current tool with so that it's all in one platform. But in playing with all the exciting new features that Studio has to offer, he found a real-world use case for his restaurant and hotel clients, taking about 3 hours to build a proof of concept for a food cost dashboard that calculates the cost of preparing meals using a recursive element that he can leverage for his clients. Caroline, who's also here today from Aqua, uses the Studio Kanban view embedded in her FileMaker solution to track the status of her projects with her clients. So it's all in one place. And lastly, as I showed in the keynote, Richard has a solution to extend his current project management solution to his clients. Now, we got to meet with Richard in person, which I found extremely valuable, just like being with all of you here today. In fact, your feedback is invaluable to us, which is why we created our Claris Kitchen. We gave a group of about 15 partners early access to Custom View and asked them to build something of value and work closely with us to provide feedback. We wanted as much feedback as we could, as possible on what we were building, and we wanted it early and often so we could test and validate our hypotheses and ensure that we were delivering you value. And we wanted our partners to have a community to build with. And our partners took off running, as you can see from the examples. We host office hours about every 2 weeks, and this is an optional time for the partners to come and ask questions, give demos, feedback, or just to listen. The time is theirs. And the office hours is actually, I would say, my favorite meeting as of late. Even though the meetings tend to be early, and I'm not a morning person, everyone is so eager and excited to chat, and I love hearing all of the partner stories and feedback and use cases around this that even we didn't think of. So with the kitchen, we've created a community of partners to build together and interact with one another. In fact, for example, Remco is clearly a studio champion, and he will beat me to answering questions that are posted in our Claris community group before I can get to it. Now, what's next? As Giuliano mentioned in the keynote, we are currently working to get a free tier of Studio available to all of you, and Custom View will be coming with this. But as we continue to scale testing, I want to talk to more of you. So please scan this QR code to get early, to sign up to get early access to Custom View and join our kitchen. Please note, we're going to work with developers that have a use case we hope we can leverage and have the time to build. Luckily, it's not that big of a time ask. I will also have this QR code at the product booth, so please stop by. Angela, Remco, and I will be hanging around the product booth at these times. Like Angela mentioned, there's a lot more features that we did not have time to demo today, and we would love to show you and do live demos for you. So please stop by our product booth. But that's not it. Caroline has a session later today on Claris Studio and what's in market today to help give you guys a fundamental understanding and help orient yourself with the new product. Louis de la Parra also has his session cutting through integration chaos with Claris Connect, where he's got some pretty exciting things. We have connectors relating to Studio, so you'll be able to programmatically create things in Studio. And he'll be demoing some of that as well, and that will be a part of our kitchen. Lastly, join our Claris community if you haven't already to participate in our Claris Studio discussions. I'm excited. I'm beyond excited about where Custom View and Studio as a whole is going. As you can see from our partners, there's a lot of excitement around it, and I hope that you all feel my excitement and can join me in this journey with Claris Studio. Thank you. Now we have 10 minutes for Q&A. We have a microphone too. Oh, okay.
As far as the access, the user actually logging into the this new studio, is that still following the same authentication that is set up in your server, like using some form of IDP, or how is access to this view?
Good question. So currently, Claris Studio is supported with Claris ID. So to develop in Claris Studio, you need a Claris ID. That being said, like I said in the keynote, we're working on getting those views. You can share views publicly with a URL. And we're also working on groups and permission sets and external auth with Studio, as we know that's important.
Going back to that, on my use case, we have about 4,000 providers all over the United States. If I decide to use Claris to build a dashboard for them, what kind of license are we talking about here? I'm going to have to pay per user, per session. What's the deal?
So we're currently working on the licensing for that right now.
So this is not a mature solution at this point. So in my case, should not even explore because
I think you should explore. It is becoming mature. We are working on the licensing, and we are looking to not make the same kind of mistakes we made with WebDirect and that licensing and restricting data collection. Giuliano is also the one currently working on the licensing, so he can speak to that.
You speak for can you say again the size of the deployment to understand what we're...
Well, we have 4,000 providers all over the United States, and the network's expanding on a daily basis. We are projection for probably for 6,000 by the end of the year, beginning next year.
But you're talking about external users in a way, so people that wouldn't need a name account the way you would.
No, they do.
Right now, you would do it in FileMaker.
So how the work is, I'm going to give you a simple user case. So we schedule appointments with providers all over the United States for patients. Okay. So sometimes the provider have to reschedule that appointment. I want to give them a dashboard that can go ahead and just cancel some simple field for appointments.
Okay.
So I have 4,000 providers that need this function.
Fine.
So how would they log in? Like, how would we?
So you still that information is still behind a set of credentials. Okay. So for on that aspect, if that's not what would be a traditional name user on FileMaker, from that aspect of Studio, that would not be available right now. Not as a get-go. The view that Bridget and Angela has shown are for now designed to be for public consumption only. So they won't be gated by credentials yet. The moment we'll get there, that will become a more structured approach. We're going to have a more structured approach to that. But right now, if you have any use case where you don't need somewhat of an identity that needs to be recognized in order to access to a view, we won't be metering that based on my number of users if we're talking about external facing people. I know that yesterday the table about licensing has been up for a few seconds, so you probably couldn't grasp all the details. But primarily what we're going to meter Studio around to begin with, because they're not going to have a separate user pool compared to FileMaker, will be just an amount of actual views that you build with Studio that are shared for consumption with end users. Whether those are users that are already licensed on your FileMaker license as you have right now, or they're anonymous guest users from public internet, that doesn't matter to us right now. We want to make it sure that we don't make this the thought process of figuring out how much it's going to cost too complicated. And the benefit of Studio is built on an infrastructure that is multi-tenant, is way more cost efficient. So managing traffic of thousands of users that makes a handful of access to read only or making some small operation by API interacting with a web page is not going to break the bank. So that's not a concern. So we have the opportunity to be a little bit more loose there. And then based on the pattern of adoption that we're going to observe, we might fine tune how we can, best license that. But right now, we'd rather keep things simple. The moment we're going to get closer to a place where you can issue identity, so to speak, to external people, to your organization, I might expect that to be factored into the licensing, maybe in some ways, but that's not there yet. So I don't have I can give you an actual projection right now, but hopefully they will become also more visible through the initiative that we have, like the visible backlogs. As soon as that thing becomes more scoped by the team, will become visible in there, and all of you can engage in conversation with us to learn more about it.
Because right now I'm on a turning point. We have a depreciated solution running PHP right now. I was trying to figure out if the studio can come in place for replace this PHP solution we have right now.
It could, and it might, and often with development in general, the answer is always it depends on how you develop, how you build the solutions. I'm happy to swing by the booths and maybe get a little bit more into the weeds of a use case and talk through it.
Question?
Could you speak to how and if it, pushes data back and forth with FileMaker Pro, please?
Yes. So, is my microphone on? Oh, okay. Yes. So the data from Studio is migrated to FileMaker, and I think Louis demoed it in his session in the keynote, and we'll be talking about it more in Connect. But you can add an external table, an external data source within FileMaker that is your Studio table. And we're making that connection stronger as well with Claris Connect as we continue.
I just wanted to clarify something you said earlier to make sure I understood it correctly. So if we have people that want to access these custom views that are external to the system, we could generate some sort of public IP so they don't have to go through the Claris ID login?
Yes, exactly. Here.
I got one more, sorry.
You're next.
So there's like these small little blurbs of Mongo, right? MongoDB.
Mm-hmm.
So is it using MongoDB in the background, or like what's the connection between the MongoDB? I've heard it a couple of times, and I just want more on how they're using that. Yeah.
Louis going to say it more eloquently than me, so.
So as far as MongoDB, you've heard Peter talk about it. One of the things it gives us on Studio, which is based on MongoDB, is one, eventual consistency. As you saw in the keynote, it also gives us event-driven access that we didn't necessarily have before. So Studio is supported by MongoDB. We do have an abstraction layer, so we can swap out that database as we need, swap out the storage layer. But MongoDB gives us the advantages of both scalability and then also being able to read in events, right, and act on things in real time.
Will we be able to access that MongoDB directly?
At the moment, I would say no. You can access it through either Connect or through FileMaker, right? You can run scripts on your external tables like you can today in ESS. You can also, if you come to my session, use a Studio connector to actually access that data. But as Giuliano says, it does depend. The use case is long, and we'll see where we go from here.
That answered what I was going to ask.
Okay.
2 for 1. Love it.
What do you have in the CI/CD versioning for each one you're building these types of solutions? Is there any way to manage that? Thanks. I was meaning to ask, what do you have in the CI/CD area and versioning to be able to control when you build these solutions?
So the question was on CI/CD, how do you control kind of development and rollout? I don't want to keep going back to my session, but for that I will as well. We do have some things in the works with the Studio connector that helps you to do that. I wouldn't say we're complete by any means. We are kind of iterating as we go, but there are things you can do to mock up a layout, make sure it works the way it works, and then push it out as you need.
What is your session again?
Cut through the chaos with Claris Connect, Thursday at 10:30. Yep.
I got a couple questions. One of them is related to, can you add data sources for multiple FileMaker servers to the platform? It means, you can pull a dashboard that actually pulling data from one FileMaker server and the other data sources from a different FileMaker server.
Sure, I'll answer that. I think pull might be not the right term to use. I don't know that we necessarily would reach into FileMaker and pull the data out. More like a push mechanism where you add a Studio data source to that FileMaker file and then write to it. That will write to Studio. Also will allow you to trigger things in Connect. So
Okay.
I'd say it's more of a push mechanism than a pull.
And the other question is related to, I saw you adding more calculations to the thing, but I noticed just the first one you used was is blank. Do you ever think about making it is empty?
Yes, we've talked about that.
I mean,
Quite often.
and moving forward, you know, you are the same FileMaker developers. Now we are working on FileMaker, it's empty, and then you go to Studio and say it's blank. Then now you need to remember, then it's nice to have the same set of function names as is possible.
Absolutely, that's come up from quite a few people. One of the great things about Studio is we can iterate fast. One of the things we're looking for is feedback like that. So I'd ask, please, as often as possible, give us that feedback, and we will iterate accordingly.
Yeah, just to reiterate that, I think we are focusing a lot on onboarding right now. As we know, there's kind of a lot to take in, and you all are FileMaker developers. How do we get you acquainted with Studio? So in joining our kitchen, that is one of our main focuses right now. And it kind of, you know, directly influences our backlog. But I think we're at time. So for more questions, come to the product booth or just flag me down if you see me. But thank you all so much.